The first thing Jack Harlan noticed about his new prison wasn't the walls. It was the absence of them. Where human detention facilities favored concrete and steel, the Kalari built their structures from living crystal that hummed with barely audible frequencies. The material seemed to breathe, shifting between translucent and opaque, depending on the angle of observation. Jack stood in what should have been a cell, but looked more like an art installation. His reflection fractured across a dozen surfaces that shouldn't have existed in the same space. "You find our architecture disorienting." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, a characteristic of Kalari acoustics that made Jack's teeth ache. General Arya Talvin materialized from what he'd thought was a solid wall, her form resolving like a broadcast coming into focus. Most humans do. Jack had seen her before, of course. Every soldier in the Colonial Defense Force knew that face. Those distinctive emerald eyes that marked her subspecies. The elongated fingers that could crush steel or perform microsurgery with equal precision. But television broadcasts and intelligence briefings hadn't prepared him for the sheer presence of her. She stood 8 feet tall in her natural posture, her skin a shifting pattern of deep blues and grays that adapted to the light like living camouflage. "I've been in worse places," Jack said, keeping his voice steady. 3 weeks ago, he'd been captured during the disaster at Kepler Station. He'd expected torture, interrogation, maybe a quick execution if he was lucky. Instead, he'd been shuttled between increasingly bizarre holding facilities, each transfer accompanied by cryptic comments from his guards about his special assignment. Arya circled him, her movement fluid in a way that human joints could never achieve. The Kalari had evolved from something between reptiles and cephalopods, their skeletal structure more suggestion than framework. It made them devastating in close combat, able to strike from angles that shouldn't exist. "Do you know why you're here, Specialist Harland?" "Can't say I do, General, though I'm guessing it's not for my sparkling personality." Something that might have been amusement flickered across her features. Kalari expressions were subtle, mostly conveyed through the positioning of the small tendrils that framed their faces like elaborate hair. "You have a reputation among your kind. 16 successful extractions from hostile territory, 3 Bronze Stars, a psychological profile that indicates unusual resilience under pressure. Flattery will get you nowhere." "I'm not flattering you. I'm explaining why you were selected for a task that most would consider beneath them." She gestured, and the wall behind her became transparent, revealing a sprawling compound beyond. It was a fusion of architectural styles, Kalari bioforms intertwined with captured human technology, creating something beautiful and unsettling. "You're going to be a babysitter." Jack laughed. He couldn't help it. After weeks of uncertainty, after preparing himself for everything from vivisection to mind probes, the absurdity of it broke through his defenses. "You're joking." "The Kalari do not joke about duty." Arya's tone could have frozen nitrogen. "My offspring requires a guardian. You will fulfill that role. And if I refuse, then you'll be returned to the general prison population, where the average human survival rate is approximately 6 days. She paused, letting that sink in. "However, there is one additional condition. If harm comes to my offspring while under your protection, you will experience a death that will make those 6 days seem merciful by comparison." Jack studied her face, looking for any sign of deception. But reading Kalari expressions was like trying to interpret abstract art while drunk. "Why me? Why a human?" "Political theater," she admitted, with surprising candor. "There are those among my people who view humans as barely sentient. Having one of your kind serve in my household makes a statement about my progressive views. It may help in future negotiations. So I'm a prop. You're a living symbol of potential coexistence. Whether you're more than that depends entirely on you." Before Jack could respond, something small and fast collided with his legs. He looked down to find a Kalari child clutching his knees, chittering excitedly in their native language. The kid couldn't have been more than 9 or 10 in human years, with the same emerald eyes as Arya, but softer features that hadn't yet sharpened into adult angles. "Leo," Arya said, her voice carrying a warning tone that transcended species. "English, please. Our guest doesn't speak Kalari." The child looked up at Jack with those enormous eyes and switched languages with barely an accent. "You're the human mother, said you were coming. Do you really eat your food while it's dead? That's so weird." Jack found himself smiling, despite the situation. "Yeah, we're pretty weird about that. You must be Leo. I'm 9 cycles old, and I can already solve third-tier mathematical proofs." The kid's tendrils writhed with excitement. "Mother says I'm not allowed to dissect you. But can I see your internal organs with the scanner? I promise I'll be careful." "Leo," Arya's voice could have cut diamond. "What did we discuss about appropriate boundaries?" "But Mother, it's for science." Jack knelt down to Leo's level, his military training cataloging exits, potential weapons, and threat positions even as he smiled at the child. "How about we start with something less invasive? I could teach you some Earth games." Leo's eyes widened impossibly. "Games like competition simulations." "Sure, if that's what you want to call them." Arya watched this interaction with an expression Jack couldn't read. After a moment, she spoke again. "Your quarters are adjacent to Leo's. You'll have access to the common areas of the residence, but attempting to leave the compound will trigger the security protocols. The neural implant we've installed will ensure compliance." Jack's hand went to the back of his neck where he'd noticed the small incision. Neural implant. Nothing invasive. Think of it as a very sophisticated house arrest monitor. It will also allow you to understand spoken Kalari, though speaking it would require surgical modifications to your throat that I doubt you'd appreciate. How thoughtful. Leo's schedule is highly regimented. Education from 1st to 3rd cycle. Physical conditioning from 3rd to 4th. Strategic studies until 5th cycle. You will accompany them to all activities and ensure their safety. From what who's going to threaten a general's kid in her own compound? Arya's tendrils went very still, a sign Jack was beginning to recognize as significant. "That is not your concern. Your only duty is to ensure Leo's well-being. Succeed, and you'll live comfortably. Fail, and you won't live at all." She turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Specialist. My offspring has never interacted with a human before. They are curious, intelligent, and completely lacking in self-preservation instincts. Try not to let their enthusiasm get either of you killed." With that cheerful thought, she dissolved back into the wall, leaving Jack alone with an alien child who was now attempting to climb him like a tree. "Your skeletal structure is so rigid," Leo exclaimed, poking at Jack's ribs through his shirt. "How do you fit through small spaces?" "We don't," Jack said, carefully extracting the child from his torso. "We just make bigger doors." Leo's laughter sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. The next few days established a routine that was both mundane and surreal. Jack would wake in his quarters, a space that seemed to exist in more dimensions than 3, to find Leo already waiting outside his door. The kid never seemed to sleep, though Jack learned that Kalari required only about 3 hours of rest per cycle. Breakfast was an adventure. Kalari food was still alive, mostly consisting of engineered organisms that wriggled on the plate until consumed. Jack's human rations came in sealed packages that Leo examined with the fascination of an archaeologist discovering ancient artifacts. "It doesn't move at all," Leo observed, poking at a protein bar with a utensil that looked like a cross between a fork and a torture device. "How do you know it's fresh?" "Expiration dates," Jack said, trying not to watch as Leo's meal attempted to escape across the table. "We put dates on everything." "But what if it lies?" "Food doesn't lie, kid. Ours does. Yesterday's lunch told me it was nutritious, but it was mostly empty calories." Jack decided not to pursue that line of conversation. The education sessions were where things got interesting. Kailari children learned differently than humans. Their brains capable of processing multiple information streams simultaneously. Leo would sit in the center of a holographic storm of data. Tendrils extended to manipulate different equations, while their eyes tracked entirely separate video feeds. It was like watching someone juggle chainsaws while solving crossword puzzles. The instructor, a elderly Kailari, whose name translated roughly to keeper of necessary disappointments, treated Jack like furniture, which suited Jack fine. It gave him time to observe, to learn. The compound was larger than he'd first thought, with at least 60 personnel moving through its halls. Most were military, their movements too coordinated, their awareness too sharp for civilians. But there were others, support staff maybe, who seemed nervous. They moved quickly, avoided eye contact, and always seemed to be watching shadows. During physical conditioning, Jack discovered that Leo was remarkably fragile for a Kailari. Where adult members of their species could bend steel and survive vacuum exposure for limited periods, children were vulnerable until their final metamorphosis around age 15. Leo could barely manage the obstacle courses designed for their age group, often requiring assistance from the automated safety systems. "I hate this," Leo confessed, after a particularly brutal session, their small form trembling with exhaustion. "Everyone else makes it look so easy." "You know what we say on Earth," Jack offered a water tube, noting how Leo's tendrils reached for it before their hands. "Comparison is the thief of joy." "That doesn't make sense. How can comparison steal? It's not a physical entity."
"It's a metaphor. It means you'll never be happy if you're always looking at what others can do, instead of focusing on what you can do."
Leo considered this, their large eyes blinking slowly. "Humans are very strange. You make concepts into people and then blame them for your problems." "Pretty much, yeah. I like it. Can I blame my failure on the obstacle course being a thief too?" "That's not quite how it works." "But you just said—" "I know what I said. Human logic doesn't always make sense. Mother says that's why we're winning the war." The casual mention of the war sent a chill down Jack's spine. It was easy to forget, in the day-to-day routine of child-minding, that he was in enemy territory. That, outside this compound, humans and Kailari were still killing each other over colony rights and resource claims. Strategic studies brought a different challenge. The instructor for this course was none other than General Talvin herself. She would materialize in the study chamber like a force of nature, her presence immediately commanding absolute attention. These sessions were conducted entirely in Kalari, which Jack could understand thanks to the implant, but couldn't participate in. He watched Arya teaching her child the art of war with the same detached precision she probably used to plan campaigns. Leo absorbed the lessons, but asked questions that seemed to frustrate their mother. "But why do we have to take their colonies?" Leo asked during one session. "Couldn't we just share?" "Resources are finite. Space is vast, but habitable worlds are rare. Competition is the nature of existence." Jack says humans have a concept called compromise. Arya's gaze fixed on Jack with laser intensity. "Does he? And what else has Jack been teaching you?" "Card games," Leo chirped, oblivious to the tension. "Did you know humans have a game where lying is the primary strategy? It's called poker." "Fascinating." Arya's tone suggested it was anything but. Perhaps Jack could demonstrate this game sometime. It wasn't a request. That evening, Jack found himself in Arya's private study, a room that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. The walls showed real-time feeds from a dozen worlds, battles raging in silence while she worked at a desk that projected information directly into her visual cortex. "You're teaching my offspring human concepts," she said without preamble. "You wanted them to have a human guardian. Human concepts come with the package. I wanted a decorative prisoner who would follow instructions, not a cultural ambassador." "Then you picked the wrong guy." She stood, unfolding to her full height, in a movement that triggered every prey instinct evolution had left in Jack's brain. You seem to forget your position here, specialist. You exist at my sufferance.
I haven't forgotten anything, General. But that kid of yours is brilliant, curious, and desperately lonely. They ask questions because they want to understand, not because they're trying to challenge authority. Maybe if you spent less time teaching them how to kill my people and more time just being their mother.
The tendril that wrapped around his throat moved faster than his eyes could track. Jack found himself lifted off the ground, his feet dangling as Arya brought him to eye level. You dare lecture me on parenting? Jack couldn't speak with the pressure on his windpipe, but he met her gaze steadily. After a moment that stretched like eternity, she released him. He dropped to the floor, gasping. Leo's other guardian was killed 6 weeks ago, Arya said quietly. Poisoned by someone who wanted to send me a message. The one before that lasted 3 months, before someone rigged their transport to explode. The one before that. She trailed off, staring at the battlefields on her walls. You're not here as a political statement, Specialist Harland. You're here because no one expects a human to last long enough to matter. You're expendable, disposable, and most importantly, you're unexpected. No one will invest resources in elaborate assassination attempts on someone they assume will be dead within days anyway. Jack rubbed his throat, processing this information. So I'm not just a babysitter. I'm bait. You're a breathing decoy who might, if you're very lucky and very careful, keep my offspring alive long enough for me to identify and eliminate the threats against them. Why not just send them away, hide them somewhere safe? Because there is no safe place. Not for the offspring of the architect of humanity's greatest defeats. There are those among my own people who would see Leo dead, just to wound me. And there are those among yours who would pay any price for that kind of leverage. She turned back to her desk, the dismissal clear. Continue as you have been. Leo seems to respond well to your presence. But remember, specialist, the moment you become more trouble than you're worth, you'll be replaced. And unlike your predecessors, you won't merit the dignity of an elaborate death. Jack stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, General, Leo's a good kid. Whatever else is going on here, they deserve better than being a pawn in everyone's games. On that, Specialist Harland, we are in complete agreement. The attack came 3 days later. Jack had noticed the signs. A new service worker who moved with military precision. Guards checking sectors they usually ignored. The way conversations stopped when he and Leo entered a room. His combat instincts screamed danger. But the neural implant wouldn't let him act on unauthorized threats. They were in the recreation center, a massive space where Kalari youth practiced their shape-shifting abilities. Leo was attempting to flatten themselves enough to slide under a barrier, their form rippling with effort. You're overthinking it, Jack advised. Sometimes you just have to trust your body to know what to do. Easy for you to say. Your body only has one shape. Yeah, but it's a pretty good one. Leo laughed, the sound echoing off the crystalline walls. That's when Jack saw it. A distortion in the air like heat shimmer. Cloaking technology, military grade. His body moved before his mind caught up, diving toward Leo as the shimmer resolved into a figure holding an energy blade. The neural implant shrieked warnings directly into his brain, threatening immediate termination for unauthorized aggression. Jack ignored it. He'd been a soldier too long to let programming override instinct. He caught Leo around the waist, rolling them both behind a training obstacle, as the blade carved through the space where the child had been standing. More shimmers appeared. At least 4 attackers decloaking with weapons drawn. They moved with Kalari grace but human tactics, a hybrid approach that spoke of careful planning. Stay down, Jack hissed at Leo, whose eyes were wide with terror. The kid nodded, curling into the smallest shape they could manage. Jack's options were limited. No weapons, no backup, and an implant that was currently flooding his system with paralysis warnings. But he'd survived 16 extraction missions by being creative. He grabbed a training weight, a sphere of ultra-dense material used for strength conditioning, and hurled it at the nearest attacker. The impact wasn't lethal, but it disrupted their cloaking field, revealing them fully. Security alarms began wailing. The attackers converged on their position. Jack kicked over an equipment rack, creating a barrier, then grabbed Leo and ran. Not toward the exits, which would be expected, but deeper into the recreation center, toward the gravity manipulation chamber.
"What are you doing?"
Leo gasped. Something stupid. The gravity chamber was designed to let young Kaylari practice moving in different gravitational fields. Jack had observed enough sessions to know the controls. He shoved Leo into an alcove marked for equipment storage, then sprinted for the control panel. The attackers followed, their forms blurring with speed. Jack reached the panel just as the first one reached him, dodging an energy blade by millimeters. His fingers flew over the controls, setting the gravity to maximum human tolerance, about 3 times Earth normal. For Jack, who'd trained in high-gravity environments, it was manageable. For the Kaylari, whose hollow bones and fluid structure were designed for flexibility, not compression, it was devastating. 3 of the 4 attackers collapsed immediately, their forms unable to support themselves. The 4th, clearly enhanced somehow, stayed upright and advanced on Jack with lethal intent. Jack grabbed a training staff from the wall, its weight tripled by the gravity, but still manageable. They circled each other, predator and prey no longer certain which was which. The attacker lunged. Jack parried, the impact sending shockwaves up his arms. They exchanged a flurry of blows, the high gravity making every movement costly. Jack's muscles screamed, his bones creaked, but he'd survived worse. Then Leo screamed. Jack turned to see a 5th attacker, one who'd stayed cloaked, dragging the child from the alcove. The moment's distraction cost him. The energy blade punched through his side, a line of agony that dropped him to one knee. But it also freed him from the last restrictions of the neural implant, which classified lethal injury as acceptable grounds for unlimited response. Jack reversed his grip on the staff and drove it backward, catching his attacker in what passed for a solar plexus among Kaylari. They doubled over, and Jack grabbed the energy blade, ignoring the way it burned his palm, and spun toward Leo's attacker. The throw was perfect, the blade spinning through the high-gravity air to strike the 5th attacker in the shoulder. They released Leo, who scrambled away. Security forces flooded the room, led by General Talvin herself. She moved through the triple gravity like it was nothing, her form shifting to something combat-optimized that Jack's eyes couldn't quite track. The remaining attackers were subdued in seconds. The gravity returned to normal, and Jack collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness took him was Arya kneeling beside him, her expression unreadable, while Leo clung to her, chittering rapidly in Kaylari. He thought he heard Arya say something, but the translator couldn't parse emotion, only words. The human fought like one of us. Coming from a Kaylari general, it might have been the highest compliment possible, or a death sentence. Jack would find out which when he woke up, if he woke up. Jack woke to the sensation of breathing liquid. His lungs should have panicked, but instead they accepted the thick, oxygenated fluid like it belonged there. Through the amber haze, he could see shapes moving beyond what looked like a membrane rather than glass. His hands floated in front of him, the wound in his palm already sealed with new skin that had a faint iridescent quality. The membrane suddenly contracted, expelling him onto a soft surface that absorbed the impact and the fluid simultaneously. Jack coughed up the last of the breathing liquid, his lungs remembering how to process air. The human regeneration capability is remarkable. The voice belonged to someone Jack hadn't met before, a Kaylari, whose coloring suggested medical specialization, all whites and pale blues. Your species heals chaotically but efficiently. No plan, just aggressive cellular reconstruction. Jack tried to speak, coughed up more fluid, then managed. How long? 3 cycles. The general insisted on acceleration protocols. You should be dead. But humans apparently don't read the medical literature about what's impossible. 3 days. Jack's hand went to his side where the energy blade had pierced him. The skin was smooth, unmarked except for a slight temperature difference he could feel, but not see. Leo, he asked. Unharmed. Asking about you every hour. The general had to physically restrain them from entering the medical bay. The medic's tendrils rippled with what might have been amusement. The child seems to have developed an attachment, unusual for our species. Before Jack could respond, the door dissolved and Arya entered. She'd changed since the attack, her coloring darker, more militaristic. Behind her, Jack caught a glimpse of Leo trying to peer around her massive frame. You're functional, Arya stated, not a question. Seems like it. Good. We need to discuss what happened. She gestured, and the medic left, though not before Leo darted past them both and collided with Jack's recovering form. You're alive, Mother said you would be, but I calculated the blood loss, and the probability was only 32%, and I thought maybe she was lying to make me feel better. But you're here and breathing and… Kid, Jack wheezed, carefully extracting himself from Leo's surprisingly strong grip. Give me a second. Everything's still figuring out where it belongs. Leo pulled back, but didn't let go entirely. One small hand maintaining contact with Jack's arm, as if to verify his continued existence. Arya watched this interaction with an expression Jack was beginning to recognize as calculation. The attackers were Kylari military, specifically from the 3rd Battalion under Commander Kaylor's direct command. Jack processed this. Your own people. My executive officer, to be precise. Someone I've served with for 15 cycles. Her tendrils went very still. The interrogation revealed interesting details. The attack was designed to fail. What? 5 attackers for a child guardian. Cloaking technology that's 3 generations old. Weapons set to wound, not kill. It was theater. Specialist Harland. A performance with an intended audience. Jack's military mind started connecting dots. They wanted it to look like an attempt. Public enough to be noticed. Failed enough to be survivable. Why? To justify escalation, Arya said quietly. If my offspring is threatened by human sympathizers, if a human dies defending them, it provides perfect propaganda for expanding the war. Kaylor needs this conflict to continue. Peace would end his path to power. But I didn't die. No, you did something far more problematic. You survived and saved a Kaylari child using innovative tactics that will be very difficult to explain to the War Council. A human who thinks like us, but fights like you. That's not a combination they're prepared for. Leo tugged on Jack's arm. Does this mean Jack is staying? Arya looked at her child. And for the first time, Jack saw something genuinely soft in her expression. That depends on Jack. You want me to stay? It wasn't a question. Jack could read the situation clearly enough. Another attack is coming. Not just an attack. Kaylor needs you dead and Leo traumatized enough to be usable as propaganda. He'll be more careful next time, more thorough. She paused. I cannot trust anyone in my command structure. But you. You have no loyalty to Kaylor, no political ambitions, no reason to betray us except revenge for your captivity. And if I wanted that revenge, I'd have let Leo die. Precisely. Jack looked down at Leo, who was watching him with those enormous emerald eyes. The kid was scared, but trying to hide it. Their tendrils pulled tight against their skull in what Jack had learned was a defensive posture. I need something from you first, Jack said to Arya. No more lies. No more half-truths. If I'm going to protect your kid, I need to know everything. Arya's form shifted slightly, consideration rippling through her. That's a dangerous amount of trust you're asking for. Yeah, well, I just took an energy blade for your kid. I figure that earns me some honesty. She moved to the window, gazing out at the compound where security had tripled since the attack. Very well. Leo, go to your quarters.
But mother,
Now. The child reluctantly released Jack's arm and left, but not before shooting him a look that clearly said they'd be eavesdropping somehow. Once alone, Arya's composure cracked slightly. The war is ending, specialist. Both sides are exhausted, resources depleted, population growth negative. Another 5 cycles and both our species will be combat ineffective. Peace isn't just desirable, it's necessary for survival.
but Kaelor doesn't want peace.
Kaelor and others like him on both sides. They've built their entire existence on conflict. Peace makes them irrelevant. She turned back to him. I've been in secret communication with your Admiral Chen. We've drafted terms both sides could accept. But if something happens to Leo, if a human is blamed, those negotiations die. Jack stood carefully, his body still adjusting to being vertical. So we need to expose Kaelor before he makes his next move.
We need to do more than that. We need to make his next move impossible.
Arya approached him, her height forcing him to look up.
I need you to think like a human. Be unpredictable. Kaelor has studied Kaelari tactics for decades. He knows how we think, how we plan. But you're an unknown variable?
You want me to plan your counter-operation?
I want you to do what humans do best.
Improvise, adapt, survive. Over the next 2 days, Jack studied everything he could about Kaelor. The commander was a traditionalist, believing in Kaelari superiority with religious fervor. His tactical record was flawless within conventional parameters. He'd won 38 engagements using textbook strategies. That's his weakness, Jack told Arya during one of their planning sessions. He always follows the book.
The book exists because it works.
The book exists because it worked. Past tense. Every strategy has a counter if you know it's coming. They were in her private study again, the walls showing feeds from around the compound. Jack had insisted on reviewing security footage from the past 6 months, looking for patterns. Leo was supposedly in their quarters, but Jack could hear occasional shuffling from the ventilation system. There. Jack pointed to a feed from 2 months ago. That guard rotation. See how it changes every 12 days, except for this section. It's been the same for 3 months. Arya leaned closer, her presence raising the temperature around Jack noticeably. The East Wing. That leads to the environmental systems. Someone's keeping that route clear.
For another attack.
No. Jack pulled up architectural plans he'd memorized. For extraction. After Leo is dead, Kaelor needs to get his assassins out cleanly. This is their escape route. Arya's tendrils moved in what Jack recognized as aggressive thinking. So we seal it. No, we use it. Let them think their plan is working, but we control what they find when they get there. Before Arya could respond, alarms began wailing. Not the security alerts from before, but something different. Emergency protocols. Medical emergency and residential wing. The compound's AI announced, toxin exposure detected. Jack and Arya ran, her longer stride forcing him to sprint to keep up. They found Leo collapsed in their quarters, their small form convulsing. The medic from before was already there, scanner working frantically. Zerathi poison, they announced. Slow-acting neural toxin, fatal in young Kaelari within 6 hours without treatment. Treatment. Arya's voice could have frozen stars. I need the antidote from the medical supplies, but our inventory shows we're out. Someone's been stealing doses for weeks. Jack knelt beside Leo, whose eyes were rolling back, showing the translucent inner eyelids Kaelari had. How was it delivered? The medic scanned again. Ingestion. Something they ate or drank. Their breakfast, Jack realized.
I wasn't there. I was reviewing security feeds with you.
Arya's form shifted to something Jack had never seen before. Something prehistoric and terrifying. Kaylor knew. He knew I'd have you planning. Knew Leo would be alone. General, the medic interrupted. Without the antidote? There has to be another source, Jack said. Another supplier. Another compound. Something. The nearest facility with supplies is 8 hours away. The child has 6. Jack stood, his mind racing through options. Then he remembered something from his capture. The interrogation drugs. When I was first brought in, they used something to make me talk. It had a neural component. The medic's tendrils straightened. Theraxin compound. It could work, but the dosage for a human versus a child. Can you calculate it? Theoretically, but if I'm wrong... Do it, Arya commanded. As the medic worked, Jack noticed something. One of the security feeds showed movement in the East Wing, the supposedly compromised route. But it was too early. If Kaylor was behind this, why move now? Unless... It's a distraction, Jack said suddenly. The poisoning. It's not the real attack. Arya looked at him sharply. Explain. Kaylor knows you'd save Leo. He's counting on it. While we're here, focused on the medical emergency, something else is happening. Jack pulled up more feeds, his fingers flying across the interface. There, the diplomatic wing, where off-world communications were handled. 3 figures moving with purpose, avoiding cameras, but not perfectly. They're going for the communication array, Jack realized. If they destroy it, you can't contact Admiral Chen. The peace talks die. Arya was torn, looking between her convulsing child and the feeds. I can't leave Leo. You don't have to, trust me. Jack ran before she could object. The route to the diplomatic wing was long, but he knew shortcuts now. Ventilation shafts, large enough for a human, but too small for adult Kaylari. He could hear Leo's voice in his memory, excitedly explaining how the compound was designed. He dropped from a ceiling vent, just as the 3 saboteurs were attaching charges to the communication array. They spun, weapons rising, but Jack was already moving. He'd grabbed a maintenance tool on the way, a plasma cutter that could serve as an improvised weapon. The fight was brutal and quick. Kaylari were stronger, but Jack was unpredictable, using the confined space to his advantage. He took hits that would have killed him days ago, but the regeneration treatment had left him more resilient. When security arrived, alerted by his activated implant, 2 saboteurs were unconscious, and the 3rd was pinned under a fallen equipment rack. Jack returned to medical to find Leo stable, the improvised antidote working. Arya stood beside the bed, one hand resting on her child's head. The array, she asked without looking up. Intact. 3 of Kaylor's people in custody. He'll deny involvement. Probably, but now he knows we're watching. He'll have to be more careful. Leo's eyes fluttered open, focusing first on Arya, then searching until they found Jack. Did I miss something exciting? Jack laughed, exhaustion hitting him all at once. Just a little excitement. Nothing we couldn't handle. Arya looked at him, and there was something different in her expression. You said we... Yeah, well, someone's got to keep this kid out of trouble. Might as well be me. Leo tried to sit up, still weak but determined. Does this mean you're really staying? Not just until Mother finds another guardian? Jack met Arya's gaze over Leo's head. There was a question there, and maybe something more. I'm staying as long as you need me. The human stays, Arya confirmed. As part of my household, permanently, if he chooses. That night, after Leo was sleeping safely, and the compound had returned to vigilant calm, Jack found himself on a balcony overlooking the city. Arya joined him, her massive form somehow graceful in the small space. You could have run, she said. During the attack on the array, you could have used the chaos to escape. Where would I go? This is enemy territory. I'd last maybe a day. You'd last longer than that. You're resourceful. Maybe. But Leo wouldn't last without someone watching their back. Kids too trusting.
They trust you.
Yeah, well, someone has to teach them human card games properly. Your people have no concept of bluffing. Arya made a sound that might have been laughter. You're wrong about that. I've been bluffing since you arrived.
About what?
About being cold, unfeeling, caring only for strategy and victory. She turned to him, her emerald eyes reflecting the city lights.
Leo is all I have left of their father. He died in the war 3 cycles ago. Your people killed him, and I hated your species for it. Then you arrived and sacrificed yourself for my child without hesitation.
It's what anyone would do. No, it's what you did. What you continue to do. She paused, seeming to struggle with words. I don't understand humans. Your chaos, your irrationality, your insistence on hope when logic says despair. But I'm beginning to think that's what might save us all. Your people and mine. All of us. The warriors who forgot why we fight. The children who deserve better than eternal conflict. Even old soldiers who think they have nothing left to protect.
Jack felt something shift between them. A possibility neither species had considered. Not just peace, but understanding. Maybe something more.
Kaelor won't stop, he said, changing the subject to safer ground. No. But now he knows he's not just fighting me. He's fighting us. She straightened, authority returning to her posture. Tomorrow we begin training. If you're going to protect Leo permanently, you need to understand Kaelari combat properly. Looking forward to getting my ass kicked by an 8-foot-tall general. I won't kick you. That would be inefficient. I'll simply demonstrate why our species dominated 70 systems before encountering yours.
Big talk.
Accurate talk. Rest, Specialist Harland. Tomorrow. You learn what it truly means to be part of a Kaelari household. As she left, Jack remained on the balcony, watching the alien city with its bioluminescent towers and impossible architecture. Somewhere out there, Kaelor was planning his next move. The war continued on distant worlds. Peace hung by a thread that could snap at any moment. But inside this compound, a human protected an alien child while their mother planned for a future neither species had imagined possible. It wasn't the assignment Jack had expected when he was captured. It was becoming something much more. The training room's walls rippled with absorbed kinetic energy as Jack hit them for the 5th time in as many minutes. Arya stood in the center, barely having moved, her form shifting between combat configurations with liquid grace. You're still thinking like a human, she observed, not even breathing hard while Jack gasped for air. Linear movement, predictable angles. Hard to think like anything else when that's what I am, Jack managed, pulling himself upright. Leo sat cross-legged on an observation platform, calling out unhelpful advice. Try bending your spine backward. Oh wait, you can't do that. Try extending your arms. Oh, those don't extend either. Thanks for the commentary, kid.
I'm helping. Mother says observation is the first step to understanding.
Arya's form shifted subtly, something Jack was learning to read as amusement. Again. This time, forget what you think is possible. They'd been at this for 2 weeks since the poisoning attempt. Every morning, after ensuring Leo was secure with multiple guards, Arya would drill Jack in Kaelari combat techniques. Not to make him fight like them, she'd explained, but to understand how they moved, how they thought in battle. Jack circled her, watching for the telltale shimmer that preceded her strikes. There, a ripple along her left arm. He dodged right, then immediately dropped and rolled left as her feint became clear. Her tendril whipped through the space where he dodged, but he was already moving, using the room's curved architecture to run along the wall. Better, Arya acknowledged, turning to track him. You're beginning to see the patterns.
Mom, he's on the wall,
Leo shouted excitedly.
Humans don't usually do that.
Jack pushed off, aiming not for Arya, but for the space she'd have to occupy to intercept him.
She moved as predicted. And for the first time, he managed to get inside her guard. His palm struck her center mass, a hit that would have disabled a human opponent. Arya absorbed the impact by letting her form flow around it, then gently wrapped a tendril around his wrist. First contact in 14 sessions. Impressive. I had a good teacher. Their eyes met, and something passed between them that had been building since that night on the balcony. Arya released his wrist slowly, her touch lingering. Jack and Mother are making strange looks at each other again, Leo announced loudly. Both adults stepped apart quickly. Jack coughed. Right. Kid's still here. The kid is always here, Leo said, dropping from the platform with typical Kalari fluidity. Because someone has to make sure Jack eats. He forgets when he's studying. It was true. Jack had been consuming every piece of intelligence about Kalor he could access, building psychological profiles, analyzing patterns. The commander was careful, but not perfect. He had habits, preferences, weaknesses that could be exploited. Speaking of eating, Jack said, isn't it time for your nutritional break? You just want to talk to Mother alone, Leo accused, but scrambled toward the door anyway. I'm going to tell Cook you need double portions. You're getting skinny. Once the child was gone, Arya's posture shifted to something more businesslike. The surveillance teams have reported unusual movement in the industrial sector. Kalor. Unknown. But 3 factories have had maintenance scheduled at the same time. That's statistically improbable. Jack moved to the tactical display she activated. What do these factories produce? Various components. One makes atmospheric processors. Another builds transport stabilizers. The third manufactures synthetic pheromones. Jack's mind raced through possibilities. Pheromones for what? Medical applications, mostly. Calming agents for crowd control, but in concentrated doses. They could cause panic, riots. Jack traced connections on the display. If someone released concentrated pheromones during a public gathering, the diplomatic summit, Arya said quietly. 3 days from now, representatives from 12 systems will be here, including human observers. Kalor's going to gas the summit, cause a panic that derails the peace talks. We can't prove it. The factories are privately owned. The maintenance is legitimate on paper. Jack studied the display, then smiled. We don't need to prove it. We just need to make him think we're onto him. Explain. Humans have a game called chicken. 2 people drive toward each other, and whoever swerves first loses. But the key is making the other person believe you're crazy enough not to swerve. Arya's tendrils shifted. In what he'd learned was confusion. You want to threaten mutual destruction? No. I want to make Kalor think we're planning something so unexpected, so chaotic, that he has to change his plans to counter it. While he's reacting to what he thinks we're doing, we implement the real plan. Which is, I'm still working on that part. Before Arya could respond, alarms shrieked through the compound. Not attack warnings, but perimeter breach. Someone was trying to get in, not out. They ran to the security center where monitors showed a figure at the main gate. A human figure, wearing the tattered remains of a Colonial Defense Force uniform. That's impossible, Jack breathed. No human could get here alone. The figure looked up at the camera, and Jack's blood went cold. He knew that face. Marcus Webb, his squad mate from Kepler Station. The one who'd supposedly died, covering their retreat. You know them, Arya observed. He was in my unit. He's dead. I saw him die. Apparently not. Arya gestured to the security chief. Bring them in. Full containment protocols. Marcus was placed in an isolation cell, looking haggard, but very much alive. Jack stood on the other side of the barrier, trying to reconcile what he was seeing. Jack, Marcus said, his voice rough. Thank God. I've been trying to find you for weeks. How are you alive? The plasma charge knocked me into a maintenance shaft. I came to 3 days later in a Kalari medical facility. They'd captured me,
same as you. But I escaped during a transfer. Marcus moved closer to the barrier. Jack, I've got intel. The attack on Kepler wasn't random. Someone sold us out.
Who? I don't know who, but I know why. Someone wanted specific prisoners taken. You were on a list, Jack. They wanted you captured alive.
Jack felt the pieces clicking together. His capture, being assigned to guard Leo. All of it had been orchestrated. But by whom and why? Arya had been silent, but now she spoke.
How did you find this location? It's classified beyond standard military intelligence.
Marcus looked at her, then back at Jack. I had help. Resistance fighters. Kaelari who opposed the war. They said Jack was being held here.
What resistance fighters? Arya's voice had gone dangerously quiet.
Names.
I don't know names.
They used code designations. But their leader mentioned someone called Kaelor. Said he was sympathetic to ending the conflict.
Jack and Arya exchanged glances.
Kaelor, positioning himself as a peace advocate while orchestrating attacks. It was brilliant in its audacity. He's lying, Jack said flatly. Or being used. Kaelor's no peace advocate. Jack, what are you talking about? I barely survived. I came here to warn you.
About what? Exactly?
What's the warning, Marcus? Marcus hesitated. And in that hesitation, Jack saw the truth. His old friend was bait, whether he knew it or not. There's going to be an attack, Marcus said finally. During the summit. They're going to kill the Kaelari general's child and blame it on human extremists.
How would you know that? Arya asked.
The resistance fighters. They intercepted communications. Jack laughed bitterly. Let me guess. These resistance fighters also told you exactly how to find this compound. Gave you codes to get through the outer defenses. Maybe even provided that convenient story about Kepler Station. Marcus's expression cracked slightly.
Jack, I'm trying to help you.
No. You're being used to help someone else. The question is whether you know it or not. Before Marcus could respond, Leo's voice crackled over the intercom. Jack, Mother, there's someone here who says they need to speak with you urgently. Jack's blood ran cold. Leo was supposed to be in the secure quarters with guards.
Leo, where are you? Arya demanded.
The diplomatic wing. The nice man said he was from the peace delegation and the transmission cut off. Jack and Arya ran, leaving Marcus shouting behind them. The diplomatic wing was supposed to be sealed, but they found the security doors open. The guards unconscious, but breathing. Inside, Kaelor stood beside Leo, one hand resting on the child's shoulder. He was exactly as the intelligence photos had shown, tall, even for a Kaelari, with coloring that shifted between deep purple and black. His tendrils were arranged in a pattern that suggested military precision. General Talvin, he said pleasantly. And the famous human protector. How convenient.
Release my child, Arya said,
her form shifting to combat configuration.
Of course. I'm not here to harm young Leo. Quite the opposite. I'm here to prevent a tragedy.
Kaelor's grip on Leo's shoulder tightened slightly, causing the child to wince. You see, I've discovered a plot against the summit. Human extremists planning to assassinate key figures, including your offspring. You're the threat, Jack said. We know about the pheromone factories. Kaelor's tendrils rippled with what might have been surprise.
Interesting accusation. Do you have proof evidence that would stand before the council?
He didn't, and Kaelor knew it. I thought not. However, I do have proof of human infiltration. Your friend Marcus, for instance. Did you know he's been in contact with terrorist cells, planning to use the summit as cover for an attack? That's not, Jack started, then stopped. Of course. Marcus was the fall guy, the evidence Kaelor needed to justify whatever came next. Here's what's going to happen, Kaelor continued. The summit will proceed. Security will be heightened due to the human threat I've uncovered. And if something unfortunate happens, well, we'll all know who to blame.
You won't get away with this, Arya said. I already have. Unless you'd like to explain to the council why you're harboring human infiltrators and allowing your offspring to be guarded by an enemy combatant.
He released Leo, who immediately ran to Arya. Such a bright child. It would be tragic if something happened to them. The threat was clear. Play along or Leo dies, and the war continues. After Kaelor left, they regrouped in Arya's study. Marcus was in holding, unaware of his role in Kaelor's plan. Leo was shaken but unharmed, clinging to both Jack and Arya with unusual neediness. We need a new plan, Jack said. Kaelor's 3 steps ahead.
4, Arya corrected. He anticipated our discovery of the factories, used Marcus to implicate humans, and positioned himself as the voice of security.
So we go 5 steps ahead.
How?
Jack looked at Leo, an idea forming.
Kid, you remember when you asked about human games about lying being a strategy?
Poker, Leo said quietly. Right. Well, there's another part to poker. Sometimes you want the other player to think you have a bad hand when you really have a good one.
A bluff within a bluff,
Arya said, understanding dawning. Exactly. Kaelor thinks he's forcing us to react to his plan. But what if that's what we want him to think? Over the next 2 days, they prepared. Jack worked with Marcus, convincing his old friend that they were planning to expose Kaelor at the summit. It wasn't entirely a lie, which made it believable. Marcus, desperate to help and unaware of his role as Kaelor's unwitting spy, agreed to play along. Meanwhile, Arya used her networks to investigate the pheromone factories more carefully. What she found was interesting. The chemicals being produced weren't just panic-inducing pheromones. They were specifically designed to affect Kaelari, but not humans. He's going to gas his own people, Arya said, disgust evident. Make it look like human chemical warfare, while keeping the human delegates safe to maintain plausible deniability, Jack added. It's brilliant and horrifying.
How do we stop it?
We let it happen.
Arya's tendrils went rigid. What?
Trust me. But first, we need to make a modification to your environmental systems. The night before the summit, Jack found Leo in their quarters. Organizing their collection of Earth objects, Jack had been teaching them about playing cards. A chess piece made from folded paper, a rubber band that had somehow become a treasured toy. You're scared, Leo observed without looking up. Yeah, kid, I am. Mother says fear is just another data point. It tells us about danger, but shouldn't control our actions. Your mother's pretty smart. She also says you're changing everything, that humans might not be what we thought. Jack sat beside the child. What do you think? I think you're weird. You leak water when you're hot. You can't see properly in the dark. And you need to be unconscious for 8 hours every day. But you also threw yourself between me and a blade. That doesn't seem like something an enemy would do. Sometimes people are complicated. Not everything fits into neat categories of friend or enemy. Leo looked at him with those large emerald eyes.
Is that why Mother looks at you the way she used to look at Father?
Jack didn't have an answer for that. The summit began with all the pomp the Kaelari could muster. 12 species were represented, including a small human delegation that looked deeply uncomfortable surrounded by beings that could kill them with a casual gesture. Jack stood with Leo, playing his role as the decorated human servant, while Arya participated in the opening ceremonies. Kaelor was there too, radiating confidence. He'd positioned security forces throughout the venue, all loyal to him. The first phase of the summit proceeded normally. Speeches about cooperation, carefully worded statements that said nothing while sounding important. Then, during the second break, Jack noticed the subtle change in air pressure that preceded the pheromone release. He touched the emergency beacon he carried, sending the signal to Arya. She excused herself from the discussion circle, moving toward the environmental controls they'd modified. The pheromones began to spread, invisible and odorless to human senses, but clearly affecting the Kaelari. Agitation rippled through the crowd, Tendrils began to writhe. Colors shifted to threat displays. Kaylor moved toward the human delegation, ready to protect them from the attack. That's when Arya activated the modification. The environmental systems reversed flow, creating a vacuum that pulled the pheromones into containment filters they'd installed. Within seconds, the air cleared. But more importantly, the filters now held evidence-concentrated pheromones with Kaylor's factory signatures all over them. "Interesting," Arya announced, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet summit hall. "Our environmental systems just detected and contained a chemical attack. How fortunate we upgraded them yesterday." Kaylor's colors shifted to something Jack had never seen before: fear. "Even more interesting," Arya continued, holding up a molecular scanner. "These chemicals match the signature of compounds manufactured in facilities connected to Commander Kaylor's holdings." The summit erupted in chaos, but controlled chaos. Security forces loyal to Arya, who'd been positioned during the previous night, moved to contain Kaylor's people. Kaylor himself stood frozen, calculating odds, looking for escape routes. His gaze fell on Leo, and Jack saw the decision form. If he was going down, he'd take his original target with him. Kaylor moved, faster than even Kaylari should be able to, toward Leo. Jack moved too, but he knew he wouldn't be fast enough. He didn't need to be. Leo, who'd been practicing the move Jack taught them for weeks, dropped and rolled at the last second. Kaylor's grasp closed on empty air. His momentum carried him forward, straight into Jack's fist. It shouldn't have worked. Humans were weaker, slower. But Jack had learned from Arya that Kaylari had one vulnerability: their nervous system was distributed, making them hard to kill, but easy to disorient with the right impact. Kaylor went down, stunned. Security swarmed him. The summit hall was in uproar, but the human delegation was unharmed. The attack was exposed, and most importantly, Leo was safe. Later, after Kaylor had been taken away and the summit had been adjourned for emergency sessions, Jack found himself once again on the balcony. This time, Leo was with him, curled against his side, exhausted from the day's events. "You saved everyone," Leo murmured sleepily. "We all saved everyone. It was a team effort." "Jack," Leo's voice was very small. "Are you going to leave now that Kaylor's gone?" "Do you want me to leave?" "No. Mother doesn't either. She said so in Kaylari when she thought you couldn't understand. But the implant translated it." Jack smiled. "What exactly did she say?" "That you've become essential. But she used the form that means both strategically essential and personally essential." Arya appeared in the doorway. "Leo, you should be in bed." "I'm comfortable here." "Leo." The child sighed dramatically but stood. Before leaving, they hugged Jack tightly. "Don't leave." "Okay." After Leo was gone, Arya joined Jack at the balcony rail. "The council is in uproar. A faction leader attempting to sabotage peace talks. It's unprecedented." "What will happen to him?" "Exile, most likely. To a prison world where he can contemplate his failures." She paused. "The peace talks will continue. The human delegation was impressed by how you handled the situation. I didn't do it alone." "No, you didn't." She turned to face him fully. "Jack, I need to tell you something. When you first arrived, I saw you as a tool, a means to an end." "I know." "But that changed. You changed it. The way you protected Leo, the way you think, the way you've integrated into our lives, while remaining fundamentally yourself." She stopped, seeming to struggle with words. "I don't know what this is between us. Our species have been enemies for so long." "Maybe that's why it works," Jack said. "We've seen each other at our worst. Everything from here is improvement." She made that sound that was almost laughter. "Is that human optimism?" "That's human stubbornness. We're too stubborn to accept that something's impossible just because it's never been done before." "Leo loves you," she said quietly.
They've never bonded with anyone like this. Not even their tutors.
Leo's easy to love, smart, funny, brave when it counts.
And what about Leo's mother? Jack met her eyes, seeing in them the same uncertainty he felt. She's complicated, brilliant, terrifying, beautiful in a way my language doesn't have words for.
Is that your way of saying you're staying? That's my way of saying wild horses couldn't drag me away. That's an Earth expression.
I understood it, Arya interrupted. The implant provides context now. She moved closer, her presence warm against the cool night air. There will be challenges, political, social, biological.
When has anything about this been easy? The Council wants to offer you a position, official liaison between our species. It would give you diplomatic status, protection, purpose.
I already have purpose.
Which is... Jack gestured toward the compound, where Leo was probably eavesdropping somehow. Keeping that kid safe. And maybe, if you're interested, seeing where this complicated thing between us goes. Arya's tendrils formed a pattern he'd never seen before, but somehow understood. Hope mixed with affection, mixed with uncertainty.
The human stays,
she said formally, then softer.
Jack stays.
As they stood together, alien and human, soldier and general, two people who'd found something unexpected in the midst of war. Jack thought about the strange path that had brought him here, from prisoner to protector, from enemy to family. The war wasn't over. The peace talks would be long and difficult. There would be those on both sides who couldn't accept change. But for now, in this moment, on this balcony overlooking an alien city under foreign stars, Jack Harland was exactly where he belonged. The room that had once been Jack's prison cell had transformed into something else entirely. Maps covered every surface. Holographic displays showed troop movements, supply routes, and diplomatic schedules. Empty nutrient packets littered the floor, evidence of long planning sessions that stretched through multiple cycles. Jack stood at the center of it all, manipulating data streams with movements he'd learned from watching Leo. Beside him, Arya processed information at speeds that made his head spin, her tendrils dancing through multiple interfaces simultaneously. Kaelor had followers, she said, highlighting a cluster of names. His arrest created a power vacuum. Someone will try to fill it. 3 someones, by my count. Jack pulled up psychological profiles he'd compiled. Commander Thrace, ambitious but cautious. Sub-Commander Nyx, true believer in Kaelari superiority. And this one. He highlighted a name that made Arya's colors shift. Counselor Vera. She's a moderate, voted for peace initiatives twice. She also visited Kaelor in detention 6 times. Either she's trying to reform him, or she's taking notes. They'd been at this for 3 weeks since Kaelor's arrest. The peace summit had resumed, but tensions ran high. Someone had leaked footage of the pheromone attack to both human and Kaelari media, spinning different narratives for each audience. To humans, it was proof of Kaelari treachery. To Kaelari, it was evidence of how far some would go to prevent human contamination. We need to stop playing defense, Jack said, rubbing his eyes. Every time we react to a threat, 3 more pop up.
What do you suggest?
Something insane.
Something no Kaelari would expect because it violates every rule of conventional warfare and diplomacy.
Arya's tendrils stilled, a sign of intense focus. I'm listening.
We tell the truth.
She actually laughed, a sound like crystal breaking. That's your human plan, honesty. Complete, radical, dangerous honesty. Release everything. The assassination attempts on Leo, the peace negotiations, Kaelor's conspiracy, my role here, our... He gestured between them. Whatever this is becoming.
That would cause chaos.
Controlled chaos. Your people respect strength and directness. Mine value transparency, even when it's ugly. We give both species what they need to see the truth.
The Council would never approve.
Then we don't ask the Council, Before Arya could respond, Leo burst through the door, vibrating with excitement. "Jack, mother, you have to see what I made." The child held up a device that looked like someone had forced Kalari and human technology to have an unfortunate offspring. Wires twisted around biocircuits, creating patterns that hurt to look at. "What is it?" Jack asked carefully. "It's a translator, but not for language. For concepts. See, I figured out that humans and Kalari don't just speak differently. We think differently. So I made something that translates thoughts into patterns both species can understand." Arya examined the device with a mix of pride and concern. "Leo, this is incredibly advanced. Where did you learn quantum conceptual mapping? From the archives you thought you locked?" Leo's tendrils wiggled with mischief. "Your encryption is very good, Mother. It took me 3 whole days to break it." Jack couldn't help but laugh. "Kid's got your strategic mind and human stubbornness. We're all doomed." "Can I test it?" Leo asked eagerly. "I need a human and a Kalari who have complex emotional responses to each other." Jack and Arya exchanged glances. "Absolutely not," Arya said. "Please, it's for science and peace. And because I already know you like each other, so pretending you don't is silly." "Leo," Jack said gently, "adult relationships are complicated. Only because adults make them complicated. You saved my life. Mother trusts you more than anyone. You look at each other when you think no one's watching. What's complicated about that?" The child had a point, though neither adult would admit it. "We have work to do," Arya said, deflecting. "Important work that could determine the future of both our species." "More important than understanding each other," Leo challenged. "Isn't that what peace really means?" Before anyone could answer, alarms shrieked through the compound. Not attack warnings, but something else. Diplomatic emergency protocols. They ran to the command center where screens showed chaos at the peace summit. Representatives were arguing, some physically restraining others. At the center of it all stood Counselor Vera, holding what looked like classified documents. "She's leaked the negotiation terms," the security chief reported. "Everything, including provisions that would grant humans mineral rights in Kalari systems. Those provisions were balanced by technology transfers," Arya said. "She's showing only half the agreement." "It's working," Jack observed. "Look at the faction lines forming." Indeed, the summit was splitting. Hardliners on both sides rallied behind Vera's selective revelations. Moderates found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered. "She learned from Kalor," Arya said quietly. "But she's smarter. Instead of attacking directly, she's making us destroy ourselves." "Then we need to be smarter still." Jack turned to Leo. "That device of yours, how fast can you make it work?" "It works now, theoretically. Probably, maybe." "Good enough." "Arya, remember what I said about radical honesty, time to weaponize it." The plan was insane, which made it perfect. Humans had a saying: if you can't beat them, confuse them until they forget what they were fighting about. They would broadcast everything, not through official channels that could be censored or spun, but through Leo's hybrid device, transmitting directly to every receiver in range. The device wouldn't just translate words, it would convey meaning, emotion, intent. It would make lies impossible and truth unavoidable. "This could backfire spectacularly," Arya warned as they prepared. "Everything we've done has been spectacular backfiring that somehow worked out," Jack replied, helping Leo stabilize the device's power core. "That's not reassuring." "It's not meant to be. It's honest." They set up in the compound's communication center. The device looked even more unstable, connected to the broadcast array, occasional sparks suggesting imminent catastrophe. "Ready?" Jack asked. Arya took his hand, an unusual gesture for a Kalari. "If this fails, we'll likely be executed for treason by both our species." "Romantic, you really know how to sweet-talk a guy." "I'm trying to be realistic. And I'm trying to be optimistic. Together, we average out to reasonable." Leo connected the final component. Activating in 3, 2, 1. The device hummed to life, then screamed, then settled into a frequency that existed somewhere between sound and thought. Jack felt it in his bones, a sensation like being turned inside out while remaining perfectly still. "People of Earth and Kalari Prime," Arya began, her voice carrying through the device. "I am General Arya Talvin, and I need you to understand something." But what came through wasn't just her words. It was the weight of command, the exhaustion of war, the desperate hope for peace. Everyone listening didn't just hear her. They felt what she felt. "The war is killing us," Jack continued, and his words carried the memory of battlefields, the smell of plasma burns, the weight of carrying dead friends. Not just soldiers, our souls, our futures, our children's dreams. They told everything: the conspiracy, the attempted assassinations, the peace negotiations. But more than facts, they shared understanding. Through Leo's device, humans felt the Kalari need for order, for hierarchy, for patterns that made sense of chaos. Kalari experienced human passion, creativity, the beautiful madness of hope against impossible odds. "Some of you will say we're traitors," Arya said. "That I've betrayed my species by trusting a human. That I've betrayed mine by protecting our enemy's child," Jack added. "But we're not enemies." Leo's voice joined theirs, young and clear and absolutely certain. "We're just different, and different doesn't mean wrong." The broadcast continued for an hour. They showed everything, held nothing back. The attempted pheromone attack from every angle, Vera's selective leaks with full context, the real terms of peace, with all their compromises and imperfections. When it ended, the communication center was silent except for the device's dying whine. It had burned itself out, circuits fused, biocomponents crystallized from overload. "Well," Jack said into the silence, "either we just started a revolution or ended 2 careers in record time." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Not from official channels, but from individuals, soldiers on both sides demanding answers, citizens questioning the war's purpose, even some council members, shaken by experiencing their enemies' perspectives, calling for emergency sessions. Vera arrived at the compound within hours, her colors shifting through a spectrum of fury. "You've destroyed everything," she snarled at Arya. "Years of careful planning. Years of manipulation," Arya corrected. "You weren't seeking victory. You were seeking perpetual conflict. Conflict defines us without an enemy. What are the Kalari?" "Free to find out," Jack said. "That's what terrifies you. Not humans. The possibility that you might have to change." Vera moved to strike him, but Leo stepped between them. The child didn't take a combat stance or show aggression. They simply stood there, small and determined. "You're afraid," Leo said to Vera. "I can see it in your pattern. You're afraid of being ordinary. In war, you're special. In peace, you're just another counselor. You know nothing, child. I know you visited Kalor, not to stop him, but to learn from him. I know you have 3 backup plans, but they all depend on people being afraid." Leo tilted their head. "But Jack taught me something. Humans have a word: courage. It doesn't mean not being afraid. It means doing what's right despite fear." Vera looked at the child, then at Jack and Arya standing together, united. Something in her expression cracked. "This isn't over," she said, but the threat lacked conviction. After she left, they stood in the ruins of their broadcast center. The device was completely destroyed, its purpose served, but its potential lost. "We'll face consequences," Arya said. "The Council won't ignore this breach of protocol." "Worth it," Jack replied. "Look." He pulled up news feeds from both worlds. The reaction wasn't uniform, but it was significant. Protests against the war, demands for transparency, soldiers refusing deployment orders. The peace summit, rather than dissolving, had called for expanded participation. "Change," Jack said. Messy, chaotic, human-style change. It won't be enough. There are still those who profit from war, who need it. Then we keep pushing, keep being inconveniently honest. Leo tugged on both their hands. Can we be inconveniently honest after dinner? I'm hungry. And the cook made something that's only slightly trying to escape. That evening, in Arya's private quarters, they shared a meal that was part strategy session, part family dinner. It should have been awkward. A human, a Kalari general, and a hybrid child breaking bread or its squirming equivalent. Instead, it felt natural. The council wants to see us tomorrow, Arya said, passing Jack something that might have been vegetables if vegetables moved. All of us. Together. As a unit. They're calling us an unprecedented diplomatic phenomenon. That's one way to put it, Jack laughed. We're probably the weirdest family in 2 solar systems. Family. Arya's tendrils formed a pattern he'd learned, meant pleased surprise. Jack looked at Leo, who was trying to teach their food to play dead, then at Arya, whose severe beauty had become something more complex, more dear. What else would you call it? That night, after Leo was asleep, Jack found Arya in her study, staring at battle plans she no longer needed. Second thoughts, he asked. Always. It's the burden of command. She turned to him. Jack, what we did today, there's no going back. Would you want to? No. But the path forward is unclear. The council may separate us. Your people may demand your return. We've created a situation without precedent. Jack moved closer, close enough to feel the warmth her species radiated. Then we make our own precedent. First human-Kalari alliance. First interspecies adoption. First what? He reached out, carefully, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His hand found hers, different in every way but somehow fitting. First, whatever this is, he said. We don't need a word for it. We just need to be honest about it. The brutal honesty that you weaponized. The kind that says I came here as a prisoner, stayed as a protector, and want to remain as something more. Arya's form shifted subtly, her colors warming. The kind that admits I've felt more alive these past weeks than in years of war. That kind exactly. They stood together, 2 beings who shouldn't exist in the same space, let alone the same life. But they did exist, had saved each other, had changed the course of 2 civilizations with nothing but truth and stubborn refusal to accept the impossible. Tomorrow will be difficult, Arya said. Tomorrow will be tomorrow. Tonight, we're just us. A weird, impossible, honest us. Leo will be insufferable when they realize their plan worked. What plan? The device wasn't just for translation. I analyzed it. It was designed to create emotional resonance between specific individuals. She smiled, an expression that took practice for her species. Our child is a romantic genius. Our child? You said it yourself. We're a family. Outside, the city hummed with the energy of change. Communications flew between worlds. Factions formed and reformed. The future remained uncertain, dangerous, full of potential failures. But in that room, in that moment, a human and a Kalari stood together, having found something worth fighting for that wasn't war. It was messy and complicated and beautiful in its impossibility. Jack, Arya said quietly. Yeah. Thank you for the honesty, for the chaos, for showing us another way. Thank you for not killing me when you had the chance. I considered it. I know. I'm glad I didn't. Me too. They stayed there, planning and not planning. Preparing for a future, they were creating one impossible truth at a time. Tomorrow, they would face the council, face judgment, face the consequences of their radical honesty. But tonight, they were simply themselves, undefined by species or rank, or the wars that had brought them together. They were Jack and Arya and Leo, a family forged in conflict
but defined by something far more powerful. Hope, honest, chaotic, impossible hope. The communication system chimed. Messages were pouring in from across both civilizations. Some angry, some confused, but many, so many, grateful. Grateful for truth, for perspective, for the possibility that enemy could become other could become ally, ally could become family. It's starting, Arya observed, watching the cascade of responses. No, Jack corrected, pulling her away from the screens. It started. The hard part is keeping it going. And how do we do that? The same way we got here. One impossible day at a time. From the doorway came a small voice. Are you two going to kiss now? Because human stories say, this is when people kiss. They turned to find Leo, who was supposed to be asleep, grinning with all the mischief a 9-year-old could possess. Bed, both adults said simultaneously. But I want to see what happens next. What happens next? Jack said, scooping up the child, despite their protests. Is you sleeping so you can be rested for tomorrow's council meeting? Will they be mad at us? Probably, Arya admitted, following them to Leo's room. But we told the truth. Sometimes, Jack said, tucking in a child that didn't really need tucking but seemed to enjoy the ritual. Telling the truth makes people the angriest. That doesn't make sense. Most important things don't. As they left Leo's room, the child called out one more time, Jack, Mother, I love you both. They stopped, the words hanging in the air like a challenge to the universe itself. Love, between species that had been killing each other for decades. Love, in the middle of political chaos and uncertain futures. We love you too, Arya said, the words careful but genuine. All the way to the stars and back, Jack added. An Earth phrase that somehow translated perfectly. Later, much later, when the compound was quiet and the city beyond wrestled with its new reality. Jack stood on the balcony where so much had been decided. Arya joined him, as he'd known she would. The intelligence reports are coming in, she said. The reaction is more positive than anticipated. Several colony worlds are calling for immediate ceasefire. But the military-industrial complex on both sides is mobilizing. They'll try to sabotage any peace effort. Then we'll have to be smarter, faster, more honest than they are. You make it sound simple. Simple and easy are different things. This is simple, we want peace. They want war. Everything else is just tactics. Arya moved closer, her presence a warmth in the cool night. When did you become so wise? Somewhere between being a prisoner and becoming a father. Funny how life works. Is that what you are now, Leo's father? If you'll let me be. If Leo wants me to be. They already call you that in their private journals. I shouldn't read them, but you're a parent. We all read our kids' journals. They laughed, the sound mixing human and Kalari tones into something entirely new. Jack, there's something else. The council didn't just want to meet about our broadcast. They've received a proposal from Admiral Harrison. Jack tensed. Harrison, not the admiral he'd expected. What kind of proposal? A formal alliance. Military, economic, cultural. Unprecedented in scope. And... She paused. They want us to be the official ambassadors. Permanent representatives of the alliance. Us as in you and me? Us as in our family. They're calling it the Talvin Harland Initiative. Jack processed this. It wasn't just acceptance, it was endorsement. Official recognition of what they'd become. There's a catch, isn't there? We'd have to travel. Both worlds. The colonies. Anywhere the alliance needs representation. It would be dangerous. More dangerous than what we've been doing? Differently dangerous. We'd be targets for anyone opposed to peace. And Leo would come with us. Learn both cultures. Become the bridge between them. You're not concerned. I'm terrified, but that's never stopped us before. Arya turned to face him fully. This is real, isn't it? This impossible thing we're building. Real as anything can be. Messy, complicated. Probably doomed.
but real.
Such a romantic.
You love it.
I'm learning to.
As they stood together, the first communication from Admiral Harrison arrived. Not orders or demands, but a simple message. Saw your broadcast. About time someone told the truth. Peace talks resume tomorrow. Bring the kid. The future needs to see what's possible.
He sounds almost human, Arya observed.
Give us time. We'll corrupt you all with our chaos.
Or we'll bring order to your madness. Either way, it'll be interesting. And it would be.
The path ahead was unclear, fraught with danger and possibility in equal measure. But they would walk it together. This strange family that shouldn't exist. This bridge between worlds that had only known war. Tomorrow would bring the Council new challenges. The weight of two civilizations' hopes. But tonight was theirs. A moment of peace in the eye of the storm they'd created. And in that moment, everything was possible. The grand ballroom of the diplomatic citadel defied physics in ways that made Jack's head spin. The ceiling existed in at least 3 dimensions simultaneously, showing stars from different angles that shouldn't be possible. Crystal formations grew from the walls, singing harmonics that the Kalari found soothing, but made human teeth ache. Jack adjusted his formal attire, a hybrid of human military dress and Kalari ceremonial robes that Leo had designed. The kid had insisted on making him look proper for the Peace Gala, the first joint celebration between the species.
Stop fidgeting, Arya murmured beside him.
She wore flowing garments that shifted color with her movements, diplomatic purple threading through military blue. You look distinguished. I look like a gift-wrapped soldier, Jack muttered, but his complaint lacked heat. His attention was on the crowd, cataloging threats with the paranoia that had kept him alive through 16 extraction missions and 1 very complicated adoption. The gala had been Admiral Harrison's idea, a public display of unity to counter the remaining war factions. Representatives from 12 systems mingled uneasily, humans and Kalari maintaining careful distances while pretending comfort. The air thrummed with universal translators working overtime. Where's Leo? Jack asked, not seeing their child among the young attendees. With the youth delegation. They're preparing some kind of presentation. Arya's tendrils shifted in what Jack recognized as maternal concern. I have 6 guards watching them.
Only 6.
The other 4 are watching the guards. That's my paranoid general. They moved through the crowd, a unit that drew stares and whispers. The human who'd saved Kalari children. The general who'd chosen peace over victory. Their impossible family had become a symbol, which made them a target. Jack noticed the patterns first. Security guards checking their weapons too frequently. Servers avoiding certain sections of the room. The way conversations died when particular individuals passed. Something's wrong, he said quietly. I feel it too. Arya's hand found his, her touch warm and grounding. But scanners show nothing. Since when has technology caught everything? Before she could answer, the lights dimmed for the evening's presentations. A stage materialized from the floor. Another bit of Kalari architecture that violated human understanding of solid matter. Admiral Harrison took the stage first, his weathered face showing every year of the war. Tonight, we celebrate not victory, but wisdom. The wisdom to stop fighting. The wisdom to choose life over pride. His speech was good, carefully crafted to appeal to both species. But Jack wasn't listening. He was watching the crowd, noting positions, calculating angles. There, a server who moved like a soldier. Another there, positioning themselves with clear sightlines to the stage. And in the balcony, a figure in diplomatic robes whose posture screamed military training.
Arya, he whispered. I see them, but if we act without proof,
we'll look like paranoid warmongers sabotaging peace. The trap was elegant. Any aggressive action would undermine everything they'd built. But inaction could mean disaster. Leo took the stage with the youth delegation, their small form dwarfed by the older children. They'd prepared something about unity, A demonstration using human and Kailari technology merged through their revolutionary device. Jack's parental pride warred with tactical alarm. "Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings," Leo began, their voice clear and confident. "We want to show you what's possible when we stop seeing differences as divisions." The demonstration began beautifully. Holographic projections merged human art with Kalari patterns, creating something entirely new. Music that combined both species' concepts of harmony filled the space. For a moment, even Jack forgot his paranoia. Then he smelled it. Faint, almost undetectable, but unmistakable to someone who'd survived gas attacks. The ventilation system was introducing something into the air. Not pheromones this time. Something else. Something that made his vision blur slightly at the edges. "Hallucinogen," he breathed to Arya. "Mild enough to seem like wine effects, but it'll escalate. If people start hallucinating during a peace celebration, mass panic, violence, the peace movement dies in chaos." They had minutes, maybe less. Jack's mind raced through options, all of them bad. Then Leo's voice cut through his panic. "For our final demonstration, we want everyone to participate. Humans, please raise your right hands. Kailari, extend your primary tendrils." The crowd complied, amused by the child's earnestness. Leo activated their device, and suddenly, the air shimmered. Not with hallucinations, but with something else. The device was creating a field, a bubble of clarity that pushed back against the gas. "Now," Leo continued, their eyes finding Jack's across the room, "everyone breathe deep and think of peace." The kid knew. Somehow. Leo had detected the attack and was countering it. The device, rebuilt after the broadcast, was neutralizing the hallucinogen by synchronizing neural patterns between species, creating a stability that individual minds couldn't maintain. But Jack saw the real trap now. The gas was a distraction. While everyone focused on Leo's demonstration, the fake servers were moving. Not toward the stage, but toward the support pillars that held the dimensional ceiling in place. Explosives. They were going to collapse the impossible architecture onto the crowd. Jack squeezed Arya's hand once, a signal they'd developed. She understood immediately, her form shifting subtly to combat readiness. "When I move, get to Leo," he whispered. "What are you planning?" "Something stupid." Before she could object. Jack was walking, not running, which would cause panic, but moving with purpose toward the nearest fake server. He bumped into them, apologizing profusely, in loud, drunk-sounding English. Sorry human coordination. You know we're terrible at these fancy parties." He grabbed the server's arm, as if steadying himself, feeling the explosive device hidden under their robes. "Say, you look familiar. Were you at Kepler Station?" The server's eyes widened. That moment of recognition was all Jack needed. He shifted his grip, using a joint lock Arya had taught him, and smoothly removed the device, while appearing to merely steady himself against the server. "My mistake," Jack said loudly, pocketing the explosive. "All Kailari look similar to us humans. No offense." Several Kailari turned to glare at him. But the distraction worked. The fake server couldn't react without revealing themselves. Arya had moved too, gliding through the crowd toward another saboteur. Her approach was different, purely Kailari. She simply appeared behind them, one tendril wrapping around their throat, while another removed their device. "You seem unwell," she said pleasantly. "Perhaps you should rest?" The saboteur collapsed, unconscious before they hit the floor. Kailari paralysis techniques were efficient. But there were more, and Leo's demonstration was ending. The crowd would disperse, making it harder to maintain the protective field. That's when the lights cut out entirely. Emergency bioluminescence kicked in, casting everything in an eerie blue-green glow. In the confusion, Jack heard the distinctive whine of energy weapons charging. "Nobody move!" A voice boomed through the hall. Commander Thrace, one of Kalor's potential successors, stood at the main entrance with a squad of armed soldiers. This gathering is illegal under Military Emergency Code 9. There is no such code, Arya said, her voice carrying despite the chaos. There is now, Thrace smiled, all teeth and ambition. Enacted 30 seconds ago by the Military Council in response to evidence of human biological warfare.
The hallucinogen. They detect traces, blame humans, use it to justify a coup. It was brilliant and horrible.
You mean the gas your people released, Jack called out. The one that's been neutralized.
I mean the weapon humans deployed against peaceful Kalari citizens. We have proof.
No, a young voice said firmly. You have lies.
Leo stood on the stage, their small form somehow commanding attention. I recorded everything. Every molecule that entered this room. Every person who moved wrong. Every word spoken in shadow. They held up their rebuilt device, now revealing another function.
My translator doesn't just share feelings. It records truth. Want to see what really happened?
Thrace raised his weapon toward the child.
That device is evidence. Surrender it.
Jack moved, but Arya was faster. She didn't attack Thrace directly. Instead, she hit the crystal formation above him, shattering it into a cascade of singing shards. Not lethal, but disorienting. In the confusion, Jack reached Leo, scooping them up while the device projected its recordings for everyone to see. The fake servers, clearly marked as Thrace's people. The gas canisters being placed. Thrace himself, giving orders.
Lies, Thrace shouted.
But his own soldiers were stepping back, uncertain.
Truth, Admiral Harrison said, entering with his own security force. We've been monitoring you, Commander.
Did you really think we'd hold a peace gathering without contingencies? The setup became clear. Harrison and Arya had known about the threat, had let it play out to expose the conspirators fully. Jack felt a mix of relief and annoyance.
You could have told me, he muttered to Arya as she joined them.
You're a terrible liar when you know the truth. Your genuine panic sold the trap. I hate when you're right.
Then you must hate most of our conversations.
Thrace and his conspirators were being arrested, but Jack kept scanning the crowd. Something felt unfinished. Then he saw her Vera, standing in the shadows, watching with an expression of satisfaction. She'd orchestrated this, not the attack, but its exposure. She'd manipulated Thrace into acting, knowing he'd fail, removing another rival while appearing uninvolved. Their eyes met across the room. Vera smiled and raised her glass in mock salute before disappearing into the crowd.
She played everyone, Jack said quietly.
Not everyone, Arya replied. We knew she'd use Thrace. We just used her using him.
Layers within layers. Welcome to Kalari politics.
I prefer human chaos. At least it's honest about being dishonest.
The gala resumed. Somehow.
The attempted attack had become proof of the peace movement's strength. Leo was being hailed as a hero, their device the subject of intense interest from scientists of both species. Jack found himself on a balcony, needing air that didn't taste of politics and near disaster. The stars above were wrong, from a human perspective, but he was getting used to wrong being normal.
You did well. Admiral Harrison joined him, looking older than his years. That intervention with the server was smoothly done. I had good teachers.
So I gather. General Talvin speaks highly of your adaptability. Survival trait. You either adapt or die.
Or, Harrison said carefully, you change everything around you instead.
Jack looked at the Admiral, reading layers of meaning.
Sir,
the Talvin Harland Initiative needs leadership that understands both species. The Council, both councils, have agreed. You and General Talvin will be the primary ambassadors, with full diplomatic authority. That's a lot of trust in a former prisoner and a general who chose peace over victory. That's exactly why you're perfect for it. Harrison handed him a data pad. Your first assignment, the colony world of Haven.
Both species have claims. Both have settlements. It's a powder keg waiting for a spark.
And you want us to defuse it?
I want you to transform it. Make Haven the model for coexistence. Show both species that peace isn't just the absence of war, but the presence of something better. Jack studied the assignment. It would mean leaving the relative safety of the capital, taking Leo into a potentially hostile environment. But it was also an opportunity to build something new.
I'll need to discuss it with Arya.
She's already agreed, pending your acceptance.
Of course she has.
Harrison smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face.
Jack, can I be frank? Please.
When we captured you, I thought we'd gained a prisoner. When you saved that Kalari child, I thought we'd lost a soldier. But now I see we've gained something far more valuable.
What's that? Hope. Real, tangible hope that my grandchildren might grow up in a universe where humans and Kalari work together instead of killing each other.
That's a lot of pressure, Admiral. You've handled worse. Besides, you won't be alone. As if summoned, Arya appeared with Leo riding on her shoulders, the child's laughter mixing with music from the resumed gala. Jack, Leo called. I modified the device again. Now it can translate jokes. Want to hear a Kalari joke that's actually funny to humans?
That's impossible, Jack said, but he was smiling.
So is peace, Leo countered. But here we are. Here they were indeed. A human soldier, a Kalari general, and a child who belonged to both and neither. Standing on a balcony at a gala that had nearly ended in disaster, but instead had strengthened the peace movement.
Haven, Arya said, moving to stand beside him. It's a beautiful world, dangerous, divided, but beautiful.
Sounds familiar, Jack replied, looking at his impossible family.
The assignment includes housing suitable for mixed-species families, she continued, with reinforced walls for when Leo experiments.
Hey, Leo protested.
I only blew up 3 rooms.
This month, Jack and Arya said simultaneously. They stood together, watching the gala continue below. Humans and Kalari, still awkward, still suspicious, but trying. It wasn't perfect. It might never be perfect. But it was better than war.
When do we leave? Jack asked.
3 days. Enough time to pack, say goodbyes, and for Leo to finish their latest project.
Which is...
It's a surprise, Leo said, then immediately continued.
I'm making a translation matrix for plants, so human and Kalari crops can grow together.
That's actually brilliant, Jack admitted. I know I got the idea from watching you and Mother. Different species, same garden, somehow making it work. Arya's tendrils formed that pattern of affection Jack had learned to recognize. Our child is becoming a philosopher. Our child is becoming dangerous, Jack corrected, in the best possible way. The night continued. Crisis averted. Future uncertain but promising. Vera was still out there, planning something. The war factions on both sides would regroup. Haven would present new challenges. But for now, they had this. A moment of peace earned through chaos, honesty, and the stubborn refusal to accept that enemies had to remain enemies.
Dance with me, Arya said suddenly.
Kalari don't dance. Neither do human soldiers. But we're not just those things anymore. She was right. They were something new. Something without precedent or rules. So Jack took her hand, figured out how to accommodate their height difference, and they danced to music that belonged to neither species, but somehow suited both. Leo provided commentary. Of course. You're doing it wrong, Jack. Your feet are supposed to move Mother. That's not how humans express rhythm. But they kept dancing, badly and perfectly, while below them 2 civilizations watched and wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, peace might look like this, awkward and strange and beautiful in its impossibility. The gala that had nearly ended in tragedy became legend, not for the attack that failed, but for the image of a human and a Kalari dancing while their child laughed. It appeared on news feeds across both civilizations. Proof that peace wasn't just a cessation of hostilities, but the beginning of something unprecedented. 3 days later, as they boarded the ship to Haven, Jack looked back at the capital one last time. He'd arrived as a prisoner, was leaving as an ambassador. The journey between those points had been impossible. But then, impossible had become their specialty. "Ready?" Arya asked. "No," Jack admitted, "but that's never stopped us before." "Humans," she said with fond exasperation. "Kalari," he replied with equal warmth. "Can we go now?" Leo asked. "Already halfway up the boarding ramp. Haven is waiting, and I want to test my plant translator." They boarded the ship, this impossible family, heading toward an uncertain future with nothing but hope, determination, and the absolute conviction that different didn't mean enemy. Behind them, the capital continued its slow transformation. Ahead, Haven waited with all its challenges and possibilities. And somewhere in the space between, peace took root and began to grow. Haven was beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are. Twin suns painted the sky in shades of copper and gold, while crystalline formations jutted from fertile soil that both species claimed, but neither could fully cultivate alone. The planet sat at the intersection of human and Kalari space, a wound that refused to heal. Jack stood on the balcony of their new residence, a structure that merged both architectural styles into something that shouldn't exist, but did. Like their family, he thought. Watching Arya teach Leo advanced combat forms in the garden below, while discussing agricultural policy with the local administrators via hologram. 6 months had passed since they'd arrived. 6 months of negotiations, mediations, and more than a few close calls. The colony world was transforming, slowly and painfully, into something new. Human and Kalari settlements that had been armed camps were beginning to trade. Children who had been taught to fear the other species were attending mixed schools, with Leo as an enthusiastic ambassador. "You're brooding again," Arya said, appearing beside him with her typical silent grace. "Thinking," Jack corrected. "There's a difference. Not with you. When you think this hard, something's wrong." She knew him too well now. The months of working together, living together, had worn away the barriers between them. They were partners in every sense that mattered, though neither had put words to what exactly they were beyond that. "Vera's been too quiet," Jack said. 6 months without a single move. That's not like her."
"Perhaps she's accepted the new reality." "Do you believe that—"
"No." Arya's tendrils shifted to a pattern of concern. "But we've been vigilant. Security is tight. The peace process is working."
"Maybe that's what worries me. Everything's working too well."
Before Arya could respond, Leo came bounding up the stairs, covered in dirt and grinning. "Jack, mother, the plants are talking." "Your translator worked?" Jack asked, unable to hide his pride. "Better human tomatoes and Kalari vitri fruit are cross-pollinating. We're creating entirely new species." It was a perfect metaphor for Haven itself. Different species finding ways to create something unprecedented. Jack ruffled Leo's hair, or what passed for it, earning a delighted squeak. "Go clean up," Arya ordered. "The council delegation arrives soon."
"Another boring meeting," Leo groaned.
"An important one," Arya corrected. "They're voting on making the Haven model official policy." After Leo left, trailing dirt and enthusiasm, Jack and Arya prepared for the delegation. It would be a mix of human and Kalari officials, including Admiral Harrison himself. The vote would determine whether their experiment became the template for peace or remained an isolated anomaly. The delegation arrived at sunset, their transport landing with barely a whisper. Jack recognized most of the faces, allies and skeptics in equal measure. But one face made him freeze. Marcus Webb, his old squad mate, the one who'd been Kalor's unwitting pawn, stood among the human delegates. "Jack," Marcus said, approaching with obvious nervousness.
I requested this assignment. I needed to apologize. For being used. For nearly destroying everything you'd built.
You didn't know, Jack replied, though something felt off about Marcus's presence. Still, I wanted to make amends. To help, if I can. Arya appeared, her diplomatic smile perfect, but her tendrils showing suspicion. Mr. Webb, your record shows remarkable recovery from your ordeal.
The therapy helped. Understanding how I was manipulated. I'm just glad to contribute to peace now.
The formal dinner proceeded smoothly. Too smoothly. Jack's paranoia, that old friend that had saved his life countless times, was screaming. He caught Arya's eye, saw his concern reflected there. During a break, Jack slipped away to their private study. He pulled up Marcus's records, his assignment history, his psychological evaluations. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. No one recovered from that level of manipulation without scars. A soft chime indicated someone entering the room. Jack turned, expecting Arya, but found Marcus instead. "Checking up on me?" Marcus asked, his nervousness gone, replaced by something colder. "Just being thorough."
You always were. It's what made you perfect for this.
Perfect for what? Marcus smiled. And it was wrong. Completely wrong. For the longest game anyone's ever played. Jack, what do you know about your capture at Kepler Station?
I was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
No. You were in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. We needed someone with your psychological profile. Someone capable of empathy across species lines, but trained for violence. Someone who could believably protect a child while maintaining combat effectiveness. Jack's blood went cold. The peace faction. The real one. Not the public face. We've been working toward this for decades. Jack, placing people, arranging events, guiding both species toward this moment.
You're saying my capture was planned? Everything was planned. Kaylor's conspiracy, his exposure, even Vera's manipulations. All of it designed to create the perfect conditions for peace.
Jack's mind raced through the implications. Every moment, every choice. Had it all been orchestrated? Arya knew, he said. Not a question, but a terrible certainty. From the beginning, she volunteered for the role. Sacrifice her military career, her reputation, even her life if necessary, to create the symbol both species needed. A Kalari general choosing a human to protect her child. A human soldier choosing an alien family over his own species. The perfect story. Leo is exactly who they appear to be. A brilliant, lonely child who needed a father. That part was real, Jack. The love you share, the family you've built. That's all real. It just happened to serve a larger purpose. Jack wanted to hit him, to rage, to deny. But the pieces fit too well. Arya's initial selection of him, the convenient timing of every crisis, the way solutions always appeared just when needed. "Why tell me now?" he asked, his voice hollow. "Because the mission's complete. The vote will pass. The peace will hold. You've played your part perfectly, and now you deserve the truth. Get out!" "Jack, get out!" Marcus left, and Jack stood alone in the study. His world reshaping around this revelation. Everything he'd believed, everything he'd chosen, had been a lie. Or had it? He found Arya in their bedroom, standing at the window, her posture telling him she knew what had happened. "How much?" he asked. "How much was planned? The capture, the assignment, the initial attacks?" She turned to face him, and he saw something he'd never seen before. Tears. Kalari could cry, but rarely did. "But Jack, everything after that first day, every choice you made, every moment we shared, that was real." "You lied to me!" "I lied to everyone. To my own people, to yours, to myself. I told myself it was duty, sacrifice for the greater good. But then you saved Leo when you didn't have to. You taught them to laugh. You made me remember what it felt like to hope. It was all manipulation. The beginning was the rest. The rest was us choosing to be more than our roles. She moved closer, and he didn't step back. Couldn't. I was supposed to dispose of you after Kalor's defeat. The plan called for a tragic accident, the human hero dying to save the peace. But I couldn't. Because by then, you weren't just a symbol. You were Jack. You were ours. How do I trust anything now? You don't. You choose. Every day. You choose. Just like you chose to save Leo. Just like you chose to stay. Just like you choose now whether to forgive me. Before Jack could respond, alarms shrieked through the residence. Not attack warnings, but evacuation protocols. They ran to the command center where screens showed chaos. The delegation transport was in flames. Those shields had contained the explosion. No casualties, but the message was clear. Vera appeared on the main screen, transmitted from somewhere off-world. Did you think I wouldn't learn the truth? The grand manipulation. The peace faction's conspiracy to end a war that defines us? Vera, Arya began, but the other Kalari cut her off. You betrayed everything. Arya. Our nature. Our purpose. Our evolution through conflict. But I'll give you a choice. Reveal the truth. All of it. To both civilizations. Show them how they've been manipulated. Or watch Haven burn. The transmission cut. Replaced by tactical displays showing ships converging on Haven. Not a full fleet, but enough. Vera had gathered the remaining war factions, unified them under the banner of righteous anger against manipulation. If we reveal the truth, one of the delegates said, the peace movement dies. No one will trust it. If we don't, Haven dies. Another countered. Thousands of colonists. Jack looked at the displays, at the approaching ships, at the delegation arguing. Then he looked at Arya, who was watching him with an expression of resigned acceptance. She expected him to expose everything, to destroy what they'd built out of justified anger. There's a third option, Jack said quietly. Everyone turned to him. We tell a different truth, not the conspiracy, but what came from it. The reality that two species can coexist, that enemies can become family, that peace is possible not because it was orchestrated, but because people chose it. That's not the whole truth, Admiral Harrison said. The whole truth is that it doesn't matter how we got here, Jack replied. What matters is what we choose now. Vera wants to destroy peace by revealing it was planned. Fine. We destroy her argument by showing that planned or not. It works. He turned to Leo, who had appeared in the doorway, drawn by the alarms. Kid, how fast can you rebuild your emotion translator? The big one may be an hour, but it burned out for a reason. The range nearly killed it. What if we didn't need range? What if we just needed intensity? Leo's eyes widened with understanding. You want to broadcast locally but deeply. Not to many people, but completely to the ones here. Can you do it? With help, yes. Then go, take whoever you need. As Leo ran off, Arya stepped forward. Jack, what are you planning? Something honest. Vera's right that people have been manipulated. But she's wrong about what that means. The manipulation got us in the same room. What we did in that room was our choice. The next hour was controlled chaos. Leo worked on the device while Jack and Arya prepared the colonists for potential evacuation. The delegation argued, some wanting to negotiate, others to fight. Vera's ships drew closer, their weapons charging. Then Leo announced the device was ready. Jack stood before it, Arya beside him, the delegation behind them. He activated the broadcaster, feeling that familiar sensation of being turned inside out. Vera, he said, knowing she was monitoring all frequencies. You're right. We were manipulated, pushed, prodded, guided into this moment. But you know what? So were you. He felt Arya's hand in his, their emotions mingling through the device. Every war has manipulators, people who profit from conflict, who need it to maintain power. You're not revealing some grand truth, Vera. You're just another manipulator, trying to restart a war because peace makes you irrelevant. But here's the real truth, Arya continued. It doesn't matter who planned what. What matters is that right now, on this planet, human and Kaelari children play together. Their parents work together. We're building something that manipulation started but can't control. The device amplified their emotions, their genuine love for each other, for Leo, for the future they were building. It broadcast, not just to Vera's ships, but to every receiver on Haven. People felt what Jack and Arya felt, the complicated, messy, real emotion that no conspiracy could manufacture. You want to destroy this because it was planned, Jack asked. Then you'll have to destroy the reality that thousands of people have chosen to build. You'll have to kill families that exist across species lines. You'll have to murder hope itself. And if you do, Leo's voice joined theirs, young but certain. You'll prove that peace was always the right choice, because we chose it despite people like you. The silence that followed was deafening. Vera's ships hung in space, weapons still charged but not firing. On Haven, colonists were emerging from shelters, standing together, human and Kaelari united not by manipulation, but by choice. The vote, one of the delegates said quietly. We should vote. It was unanimous. The Haven model would become official policy, not because it had been planned, but because it worked. Vera's ships withdrew without firing a shot. Her transmission was brief. This isn't over. But it was, in all the ways that mattered. Later, much later, after the delegation had departed and Leo was asleep, Jack and Arya stood in the garden where earth tomatoes grew alongside Kaelari vitri fruit, creating something entirely new. Can you forgive me, Arya asked, for the lies, the manipulation, for everything? Jack considered the question. Really considered it. I don't know if forgive is the right word, but I understand. And more importantly, I choose this. Whatever started it, however we got here, I choose you. I choose Leo. I choose us. Even knowing it was all planned, especially knowing that, because the plan might have put us in the same room, but everything after. The first time you laughed at one of my jokes, the way you look at Leo when you think no one's watching, the way we fit together despite being impossible, none of that was planned. That was just us. That. Arya's tendrils formed a pattern he'd never seen before, one that transcended species and spoke directly to whatever connected all conscious beings. I love you, she said, the words careful and precious. Not as part of any plan, just as Arya loving Jack. I love you too, he replied. The scared general who trusted a human with her child, the warrior who chose peace, the woman who became my partner in every way that matters. They kissed, or did something that served the same purpose despite their different physiologies. It was awkward and perfect, and entirely their own. From the house came a small voice. Finally, do you know how long I've been waiting for you two to figure that out? They turned to find Leo at the window, grinning. You should be asleep, both parents said simultaneously. Can't sleep. Too excited. Tomorrow we're planting the first hybrid orchard. Trees that are neither human nor Kaelari, but something new. Like our family. Jack and Arya exchanged glances, then laughed. Their child, brilliant and impossible, had summarized everything perfectly. Come here, kid, Jack said, and Leo scrambled down to join them in the garden. They stood together under Haven's twin moons, a family that shouldn't exist on a planet that had become the model for peace. Behind them was a history of war and manipulation. Ahead was an uncertain future, full of challenges. But in that moment, they were simply themselves. Jack, the human soldier who'd found a home among enemies. Arya, the Kaelari general who'd sacrificed everything for peace. And Leo, the child who belonged to both worlds and would help build the bridge between them. "Tell me a story," Leo requested, settling between them.
"What kind of story?" Jack asked. "The kind where enemies become friends, where impossible things happen, where love saves everyone."
"Well," Arya began, her voice warm with affection. "Once upon a time, a human prisoner was given an impossible job: protect an alien child or die trying. But here's the twist," Jack continued. "He did both. He died to his old life and was reborn into something better."
"And they all lived happily ever after?"
Leo asked hopefully. "No," Jack said, then smiled. "They lived honestly ever after, which is better because it's real." As the moons traced their paths across Haven's sky, the first human Kalari family sat in their impossible garden, surrounded by hybrid plants that shouldn't exist, living a life that had been planned by others, but was now entirely their own.
The war was over, the peace had begun, and somewhere between the manipulation and the choice, between the plan and the reality, love had taken root and grown into something that no conspiracy could have predicted.
The truth was complicated. The twist was simple in the end. They chose each other.
And that choice, more than any plan or manipulation, would reshape two civilizations forever.